Hey guys, welcome back to FHC Tactical, and on tap today we've got another 5.56 test. We're going to be running the Sabre Blade Black 62 grain against the Critical Defense 73 grain with the FTX projectile. And this is basically a follow-up video to a couple of tests we've already ran. We have ran the Sabre Blade Black and the 75 grain. We had some people say that they run the 62 grain. They would like to see how it works out. So we're going to run that one today. And the Critical Defense we ran a couple of weeks ago with the 55 grain. Did good, did what it's supposed to do. However, for me, it was a little light on penetration, so we're going to run the 73 grain and just see if we get a little bit more penetration there. And as far as the rifles that we're going to be using, we're going to actually use the PSA 11.5 inch barrel with a 1 in 7 twist. The little pistol there, we've been using that one. And as far as the rifle, it's going to be the 16-inch barrel. Now the upper is the PSA. The lower, I've actually swapped it out, and we're running a Franklin Armory now with a little binary trigger for a little extra fun there. But that's the two rifles. Both of them have 1 in 7 twist. As far as our setup, we're going to set the chrono up and get a 5-round average through it to get our average muzzle velocity, muzzle energy. And then we'll move our gel down to about 20 yards with a 4-layer clothing barrier, a layer of denim, 2 layers of cotton, and a layer of fleece. And as far as what I'm looking for out of all these videos is I'm looking for a round that I can use out of both guns that give me good performance. So I don't have to have one mag set up for my 16 and one mag set up for my 11.5. And as far as what that would look like for me, I'm looking for something that's going to give me about 14 to 16 inches of penetration, although I would be okay with a little bit more. If it goes out to 18 or 20, I'm going to be okay with that because I don't have the same concerns that some do with a neighbor next door or the way their kids' bedrooms are set up and everything. I've got a little different setup, so I'm okay with a little bit more penetration. Although I want to make sure my expansion is getting up to about a half inch of expansion. It's going to be a little difficult with a 5.56, but I believe there's going to be a few rounds out there that will meet that criteria for me, so that's what we're looking for. So we've covered everything, I think, and so we're going to get out on the range and we're going to get it going. Okay, guys, we're going to get our 5-round average here. The first one up is the Critical Defense with the FTX 73 grain. Here we go. 2564, 2592, 2559, 2602, and 2584. That is 5. Okay, next group up is going to be the Sabre Blade Black Tip 62 grain. Here we go. 2903, 2882, 2879, 2905, 2892. Okay, we've got our 11.5-inch barrel up now. We're still on the Sabre Blade Black 62 grain. Here we go. 2663, 2642, 2623, 2651, 2618. That is 5. Okay, we've swapped over to the Critical Defense 73 grain FTX. Here we go. 2351, 2376, 2330, 2420, 2375. That is 5.
Okay, let's run through the numbers for these 2 rounds real quick. We're going to start with the critical defense 73 grain. Out of the 16-inch barrel, the average velocity was 2580, extreme spread of 43, and the standard deviation was 16, which gives us 1,079 foot-pounds of energy. Out of the 11.5 inch, the average velocity was 2370 feet per second, extreme spread of 90, standard deviation of 30, which gives us 910 foot-pounds of energy. And if we look back on the 55 grain that we did a couple of weeks ago, out of the 16-inch, we were getting 3,000 feet per second. The penetration we got was a little shy of 10 inches. And for the 11.5-inch barrel, we got 2735 for an average velocity. And that gave us right at 12 inches of penetration. So with what we're seeing velocity-wise and with the weight of this round, I think we're going to get a lot more on the penetration. It should be, somewhere around 15, 16, maybe 17 inches, but we'll see. But I think that's probably what we should expect out of the 73 grain. And so for the Sabre Blade Black tip 62 grain, out of the 16-inch barrel, we got 2892 feet per second, extreme spread of 26, standard deviation of 11, which gives us 1151 foot-pounds of energy. And out of the 11.5 inch, we averaged 2639 feet per second, extreme spread of 45, standard deviation of 17, which gives us 959 foot-pounds of energy. So if we look back to the 75 grain Sabre Blade Black tip we did a few weeks ago, the velocities were similar to what we got out of the critical defense 73 grain today. And I think the 62 grain being a higher velocity, we're going to see less penetration. It won't be, I don't think, like the 55 grain critical defense that we have ran. I don't think it'll be that light, but I do think it'll be somewhere in the middle of what we've seen out of the 75 grain, which was 16 inches, and what we saw out of the 55 grain critical defense, which was 10 to 12 inches. So I'm guessing somewhere around 13, 14, maybe up to 15 inches is probably what we'll get out of this. The 2 rounds are very similar in design and performance. They're going to perform a lot the same. So that's what I'm expecting we'll see. We're going to get everything set up and get to it.
Okay, we've got our gel block down there at about 25 yards. We've got our 4-layer closing barrier ready. We've got the 16-inch barrel up, and we've got critical defense 73 grain loaded up. Let's see what it looks like. I think we got a pretty good shot there. Let's go down and see what it looks like. All right, let's take a look and see what we've got here. The impact velocity was 2545, and you almost don't even need a tape measure on this one because it went exactly 16 inches and the round is between the 2 blocks. So we got really good penetration, and just look at that beautiful wound track there. Just massive, massive cavity there as it enters. Looks like right away at right about 3/4 of an inch, man. It just expands. Closing barrier didn't affect it at all. Beautiful track. That thing, that wound track, initial wound track goes to right at about 6 inches. So massive damage there. Okay, we've got our 11.5-inch barrel up. We're still on the critical defense, 73 grain. I'm hoping for something good here. Can't tell if it's a good shot. Everything got knocked out of whack down there, but we'll go look at it real quick.
guys, let's take a look at it real quick. This is going to be this bottom one right here. This thing comes in and right about 3/4 of an inch. I don't know if y'all can hear that helicopter over me, but maybe y'all can hear me. 3/4 of an inch, that thing opens up really well. Now you don't get the massive damage like you did out of the 16-inch, but I gotta tell you, it's not bad for an 11.5-inch barrel. That thing is very nice, and it goes from about 3/4 of an inch to almost 7 inches. This initial massive wound track, very nice there, and it sheds a lot of its jacket just like it's supposed to do. Comes down, and it looks like somewhere around between 12 and 13 inches, this thing rolls over and turns backwards and goes into the second block, and it looks like we are right at 17.5 inches, maybe 17 3/4. So very nice job. Obviously you're getting better penetration with the 73 grain versus the 55 grain that we tested last week. And this may be a little bit too much penetration for some people, but I gotta tell you, for a self-defense round for me, I like this one more than I thought I would. I did not expect to get this type penetration and nice wound track, initial wound track here. So I'm very pleased with this round. Let's look at it from the top. Now, the one on the top here, this is the first one of the 16-inch, and it goes to here. You can kind of look down maybe in that second one and see where it goes a little straighter. It doesn't shed as much of the jacket. Now, I don't know if you can see that sitting down in there, but looks like a good portion of it is still left. I think that's going to end up being a pretty nice round there, but we will dig it out and see. Okay, we swapped over to the Sabre Blade Black 62 grain. Still got the 11.5-inch barrel up here. Let's see what we can do. Okay, let's look at this real quick and then we'll decide what we're gonna do next. Got a little bit of a dilemma, but this thing comes in and somewhere right about 1 inch, 1 1/4, you just get this massive explosion. You get shrapnel going everywhere, pieces of jacket, lead, copper, and it comes on down. It sheds pretty much everything within about 5.5, 6 inches. And then the rest of it comes through and exits the block on the bottom side somewhere at about 13.5 inches. And there isn't really much left. Here is the core piece that's left. And you can see it is just a tiny little piece. So 13.5 looks like it was about all it was going to get, because as it exited, it just stopped right there under the block where it came out. Didn't really make an indentation into the wood, but I'm gonna go ahead and shoot one out of the 16-inch barrel. We'll see what it looks like. And if we've got the room, I may come back and do one more. Okay, last one up. 62 grain from Sabre Blade Black out of the 16-inch barrel. And I'm sorry for the audio dropping out occasionally. It is hot out here. I got phones shutting off, cameras shutting off. I'll try to get through this. One more shot here. If we got room, we'll go back to the 11.5. All right, here we go. All right, that should be a good shot. Let's go down there and look at it. All right, let's take a look real quick. Of course, knocked it off of the block, but got grass everywhere. But I think we'll be able to see what's going on here. Comes in, and right away, somewhere around 1 inch, you just get this massive cavity stretch here. Massive damage. Goes down to 5 3/4, but you get a lot of lead and jacket fragmenting there. It comes down, and right about 13 and a half is where the resting place for the core is there. The only thing that's left. All right, real quick, we're going to try to put one more round into it through the 11.5-inch barrel and see if we get the same type penetration and performance here. Flip the catch block around. It's an older block, but the other one was a little bit crowded, so I'm just going to use this one, and we're just going to see if we can kind of get that same performance here. Yeah, I believe that's a good shot. Let's go down and look at that real quick. Okay, guys, real quick, this is the second one from the 62 grain Sabre Blade Black out of the 11 1/4. We swapped blocks here. Just wanted to see if we could replicate what we thought happened with the first one. And we're going to get that same type performance here. We get a really nice initial cavity stretch here. A massive amount of damage. That starts at about 1 inch. Comes down to about 4 3/4, 5 inches. And then you can see a lot of fragmenting going on. Dumps a whole lot of energy there. Sheds most of its weight, and then the remaining projectile comes down here at about that looks like 14 and a quarter, which I think the other one was like 13 and 3/4. So pretty much the exact same thing as what we thought with the first one. We just wanted to verify that. All right, we're going to get all these dug out, and we're going to get them back to the shop. Okay, we've got everything back in the shop. We're going to run through some numbers real quick and give you our final thoughts. We are going to start with the Sabre Blade Black 62 grain. And this is the first round out of the 11.5-inch barrel. And you can see there was not much left. There wasn't even any lead core left with this one. It could have shot, when it came out the bottom, it could have separated, and it just might have been something I didn't see. But this was the only part that we could find at the bottom of the block when it exited. And not going to be anything really left there. 10 grain. It's basically come apart completely. No need to measure it, but we are going to look at the second one that we did from the 11.5-inch. That one had some copper or some lead still attached to it there. Let's weigh it and see how much we lost. 28 grain, so lost a little over half of that one. It went pretty much the same distance as the first one. This one made it to 14.5 inches, I think. And the first one exited at 13.5, so this one went a little bit further and stayed together. If you compare that to the 75 grain that we tested a few weeks ago, it went 16 inches. So this one not going quite as far, which is pretty much what we thought it would do. Let's measure this thing real quick. 0.379 and 0.382. That's if you're not counting the little wing that it's got. I am going to measure that just to give us an idea. So if you include that, you're looking at about 0.448. Let's look at the 16-inch. It went 14, no, this one went 13.5 inches. Yep, 13.5. Let's see what it weighs there. 24 grain, so this one 22. This one lost almost 40 grain, so there's only about a third of it left, which makes sense. We'll see if we can get a measurement on that. 0.336 and 0.361.
So let's move on to the Critical Defense 73 grain. This is the one out of the 16-inch barrel here. Let's see what this weighs. 36 grain, so it lost a little over half of its weight, but it did go 16 inches. So let's get a measurement. 0.393 on its smallest, and on its widest, 0.431. And that's allowing for the pedal back here. So pretty good performer. It's not exactly what I was looking for, and I knew this was a frangible round, but I was still impressed with this round. It did really good. Let's look at the 11.5, and you can tell if you're comparing again out of the 16 and out of the 11.5. This one's out of the 11.5, this one's out of the 16. It just gets into the depth of that a little bit more out of the 16 inch. So 46 grains, so didn't lose quite as much off of the 11.5 inch, which again makes sense. It's not going as fast. Let's get a measurement on this. 0.398 and 0.418. So pretty good performer. Again, this one went, I think it was like 17 3/4 inches. So it gives you kind of the best of both worlds. It's going to dump a lot of energy early, and it does shed a lot of its jacket, but it holds on to enough to give you a pretty good expansion and get to a depth of like 16 to 17 inches. So I was impressed with this one. So final thoughts for our 2 rounds of the day, which is the Sabre Blade Black 62 grain and the Critical Defense 73 grain. Like we said, this is a follow-up video to some tests we've already done. We did the 75 grain of those Sabre Blade Black tip a few weeks ago. The penetration on those, the 75 grain, normally was about 16 inches if I recall. These were 13.5 to 14.5, which makes sense. Lighter round, higher velocity. It's going to fragment more, and it's not going to go as deep. So pretty much what we expected here. It was a good performer. Not what I'm looking for, but it did exactly what it's supposed to do. And then the opposite with the Critical Defense 73 grain. We did the 55 grain a few weeks ago. It was really light on penetration. These here, more my speed, 16 inches of penetration. They expanded well as well. They give you a good penetration, good expansion, and they dump a lot of energy early to keep you from overexpanding. So I really like this round as far as fragmenting rounds go. That's probably one of my more favorite, but it still wouldn't be one of my top picks. But if I'm loading up 1 or 2 mags, I'm probably going to go Critical Defense. If I'm loading up 10 or 20 mags, or if money is an issue, you can get these and they're going to work almost just as well. The only difference I saw was a little bit more inconsistency with the Sabre Blade Black, but they're about half the price, so that should be expected as well. So that's our thoughts. That's how everything kind of looked for us. If you've got history with either one of these rounds, we would love to hear that. We love getting the feedback that you guys are giving. I will say it again, if you like the content that we're putting out, make sure you like this video, make sure you subscribe, make sure your notifications are turned on so when we put something new out, you will get a notification. And as I always say, make sure you're getting out and exercising your Second Amendment right. We'll catch you next time.